Hello, this is Talking Europe. What rights should air passengers have? You might think we're asking that question because the busy summer travel season is almost upon us. But in fact, this issue has been around for a long time. The current arrangements came into force more than 20 years ago in 2004. Since then, attempts have been made to update regulations to make sure that passengers are sufficiently protected against things like delayed or cancelled flights. And we've all experienced that. However, Parliament's efforts have run into resistance from the EU member states. We're going to dig into the current state of play and the negotiations. Let's introduce our guests. Cynthia Ní Mhorchu is an Irish MEP from the Renew Europe group, and she's on the Committee for the Internal Market and Consumer Protection. Welcome to you.
Thank you, merci.
Merci beaucoup. And Virginijus Sinkevičius, a Lithuanian Green MEP, Vice President of the Transport Committee, and he was the European Commissioner for Environment, Oceans and Fisheries in the last EU Commission. Welcome to you as well, Virginijus.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You've been negotiating around the clock, including until 5 in the morning. Why is this negotiation so difficult and fraught?
I think it actually starts with a very basic difference in the logic, because Council comes with this very much airlines position of saying that all what Parliament is asking is additional burden and costs, which is absolutely not, because each of us, when we buy a ticket, what we want is to arrive at the airport, see our flight to be on time, leave it on time, and arrive to see our relatives, do business on time. And that's it. Just deliver your service. And this is what Parliament is saying. Just deliver your service. Yes, if you don't deliver your service, then you have to pay a sort of fine to a consumer which didn't get the service. So, of course, we have extraordinary circumstances which we want to clarify and have a clear list. Also, the current regulation is from 2004. At that time, aviation business in Europe changed significantly. We have Ryanair, who has grown enormously, EasyJet, this year, with a completely different practices. And some of those practices, they are unacceptable. For example, charging, and we see, by the way, other airlines taking those practices over. For example, charging the family for sitting together. I have 3 children, so sitting together with the children of 10, 6, and 3, I think is a must when I travel with them. And why do I pay 20 extra euros for each and every one of them?
Let's just give our viewers a sense of the key points that the European Parliament wants in these negotiations. So a 3-hour flight delay, threshold for compensation, pre-filled forms for compensation from airlines, no fee for children under 14 sitting next to an accompanying person, as Virginijus was just saying, hand luggage being part of the basic fare, and of course protection of vulnerable passengers with a reduced mobility and so on. Cynthia, what do you make of those key points? Do they all seem like common sense to you, or would you have some nuances perhaps about some of them?
There's always nuances in politics, and particularly when we are united in diversity in Europe and we've got very different geographical landscapes. If you take me, I'm on an island, so it's a vital piece of infrastructure to have a successful aviation model and system working for all of our citizens. Greece will be in a similar position, Cyprus, Malta, other islands indeed. It's different if you've got a massive transport hub in Frankfurt and you've got public transport options emanating from that great city, or whether it's Paris perhaps, or some other city. So yes, there are competing interests and competing demands, and looking at solving all of the problems to the air passenger rights through the one lens for Europe simply doesn't work. I take on board, of course, the criticism, mild criticism, of Ryanair, for example, charging families to sit together. Some parents want to get away from their children and not have them seated beside them on an airline. I joke, of course, but what I will say about the likes of EasyJet and Ryanair is that they have made airline travelling and flight and they have made it so much more cost effective. And they have reached the outer parts of Europe that no other airlines wanted to travel to. They have rolled out a cheap airline system that people have grown to love and grown to hate. But what they have done is they have made sure that there is a cohesion, and that cohesion and that cohesive nature of getting to destinations throughout all of the outer regions of Europe is vitally important for our policy in Europe, which is to protect all of our citizens and all of our regions. If you want to take some of the islands and the smaller islands that have flights that are actually part paid for by the government, so those smaller regional airlines are going to be disproportionately affected, they would argue, I'm only putting forward their argument, and I've listened to it, by some of the measures that are being considered for adoption. And nothing is set in stone at the moment, but we have to bear that in mind.
One of the key things that airlines say, I want to put this point to Virginius first, is that a lot of the delays are outside their control. For example, longer than expected security queues, longer than expected border control, perhaps a subcontractor at the airport that is handling a service that didn't deliver it on time, that other people, not just the airlines, should be held accountable as well. Do you think that's fair? Is it workable to maybe sanction subcontractors working at the airport or the airport management authority itself?
Okay, so let's separate the two. I fully agree, and the great job is done, and we really want our airlines to be successful, and they are successful businesses. Because what we're talking here, the legislation that is in place actually for 20 years, and the payments, what we're asking, if the delay is more than 3 hours, is actually we're asking for status quo. We're not asking for something extra. No euro extra. One thing what we're asking is the pre-filled form. So if your plane is actually delayed more than 3 hours, you receive to your email a pre-filled form, which then allows you to send it back to the airlines and receive a compensation. And we find it a fully fair, and that the legislation that is being there for 20 years didn't prevent businesses to grow, because Ryanair grew enormously through that time, others as well. So we see that will do no damage. Another thing, when we talk about the procedures, I hear what they are saying. I think we have to work on other legislation to ensure that we have a single sky, overflying and other issues. I do hear airlines, but they're not in this legislation. But I'm happy to look at that other legislation throughout the mandate. But when we talk about procedures within the airports, 3 hours is more than enough to pass through the procedures. So we're talking here if the delay is more than 3 hours. Another thing, what I've mentioned to you, extraordinary circumstances. So we're looking at that list and we're clarifying it. We're looking also at the decisions of the court, and we're trying to have actually it clear also to the passengers, but to airlines as well. And I think this is where we're striking a balance, because with the clarity of extraordinary circumstances, then the airlines can clearly see where they have basically, it's out of their scope, out of their operations, that basically then, yes, passengers would not be eligible for the compensation.
Yeah, we are at IDIM, of course, in this room. We all want to achieve the same thing. We've got a fantastic resource in our aviation industry and our airlines. It's one of the biggest successes of Europe, and we want to make sure that we protect it. But it's really important, the points that Virginius has mentioned, to realise that airlines, they don't operate just on those bases alone. For example, they have to operate with a fuel crisis. They have to operate in a taxation environment where extra taxes are imposed, etc., and so forth, and rightly so. And then with the advent of SAFs, and again, rightly so, sustainable aviation fuels. But what I'm trying to say is that this package is being negotiated not in a vacuum, but also in the context of other demands that are being made on the aviation industry, which we have to take cognizance of at this particular time, because we are 20 years on and there are different demands. But most of all, and we're totally at IDIM on this, we cannot damage our aviation industry because it's a massive success for Europe.
And it's obviously there is this big questions about fuel supplies and so on right now.
But that's completely out of scope. I think we cannot blame any other crisis on a basic protection of the passengers. And what I said, nobody when they buy a ticket, they want to aim for a compensation, hoping that I arrive to the airport, I stick around for 3 hours, and here is my jackpot. No, nobody wants that.
Virginijus, I'm curious what you make of the argument that the aviation industry often says, which is that consumers are just going to end up paying more because if the airlines incur their own costs with delays, they'll end up passing that down to consumers through higher ticket prices. So it's going to be air passengers that foot the bill anyway. Is that fair?
We looked at it as well and very carefully because, of course, we want to keep flying affordable. That's why, for example, on hand luggage, if you see the initial Parliament's position, which was a must hand luggage, now we're actually asking for price transparency. So basically that you get offered a price with the hand luggage. And then if you say no, the price is actually lowered accordingly. And again, I know some airlines, they don't like it because this is a part of their business model, but we find that transparency in this case is important. And then when it comes to pricing is first of all about the competition. You can see that even with the cheapest airlines, when there is a season, when there is a high demand, the tickets are more expensive, and that's absolutely logical and normal, that they want to make money out of it. And when the planes are flying empty, the tickets are more cheap. Second thing is, of course, fuel price. That affects the business enormously, availability of the fuel. So it has nothing to do with the passenger rights, because passenger rights, they are only enforced when you didn't deliver your service. And that's extremely important baseline, which we have to take into account.
I don't think it is out of scope, and I respectfully disagree with my good friend here, my good colleague on the Transport Committee, because I think we're looking at a business model that has been hugely successful over decades and has built up the resilience in Europe, the competitiveness that we want to get back more. And I do believe that we can't look at this business model unless we consider passenger rights in the round as well, even though as a lawyer, obviously, if we have it in law, I want passenger rights vindicated. But I do think, if I could just go to the micro of the bag, the infamous handbag with the trolley carry-on bag as well. I mean, we do have to continue, I believe, with the pricing model that suits cheaper tickets for passengers at the end of the day, because passengers will choose just to bring their handbag, man bag, rucksack, whatever they want to call it, with them for a cheaper price, rather than knowing that the ticket price has to include an 8 kilogram, a 7 kilogram, a 10 kilogram, whatever, roll-on bag as well.
We'll have to stop there. We've run out of time, unfortunately, but very much a debate to keep following, and do watch this space as the negotiations continue between the Council and the European Parliament. That's all for this episode of Talking Europe.